Well, welcome to the Timber Trails Micro School Information Meeting. Um, if you don't know me, my name is Nate, and I am the esteemed privilege of being the executive director and the president of Kids of Grace Academy. And I also get to help form some of the curriculum and get to guide and direct a lot of the content. So I'm really excited about what we're doing this year. And I'm really excited that you're here in this meeting to understand better what we're going to be doing and hopefully answer any questions and distill anything that you would like to know. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to go through the agenda and I'm going to ask that we save all questions to the end, and we're going to have a Q&A going. If you have a question that you want to rattle off, you can send it to info@kidsofgrace.com and we'll assimilate it all into a Q&A that I'll go through at the very end. But the idea would be to get through all this. If you have a question, send it out via the email, and then we'll hopefully tackle all of that throughout the meeting. The meeting will be recorded. However, the Q&A will not be recorded. So that will be not published for future reference. That they may result in a future FAQ video, but we're going to keep the Q&A um, private. So don't worry about that. So let's get into it. We're going to go through the micro school meeting agenda. And to begin with, I want to define a micro school. Now, that could be a very vague term for some people. Some of you may have an idea in your mind what it is, and it may be a little different than what we mean by micro school. So I want to be very clear in what we are talking about by the term micro school. So we define a micro school as a cooperative school that meets 1 to 2 times a week. In this school, students are led and instructed by a teacher who partners with parents and prepares them to work at home. So we have several distinctions there that we're going to flesh out through the course of this meeting. Mainly, it is 1 to 2 times a week. So if you're looking for a 5-day a week, 9 to 5 school, this will not be necessarily what you're looking for. But I hope by the end of this, it will win you over to our side. So this will be a hybrid model where it is school in a classroom set to work at home, and that's really the nuts and bolts of it. Teachers will be instructing classes and they'll be working with parents to get the proper schoolwork done at home. So we're going to divide this into 3 separate meetings, 3 separate categories. And the first, we're going to draw the distinctions and function of the micro school compared to other forms of education. So I just want to be very clear what we're doing and kind of what other people are doing and what we won't be doing and what we will be doing in relation to those. And all of these points will be signified by a little caption at the bottom of the screen. So if you see a 1 on multiple screens, that isn't a typo. The vision and direction number 2 of the Timber Trails Micro School, the roles of teacher and the roles of the family. So kind of breaking all of those down. And finally, the academics, the protocols, and the implementation of Timber Trails, including curriculum and safety and other policy. So essentially, number 3 will be the catch-all. How is this going to work? How is this going to function? What are the logistics? What are the nuts and bolts of everything? And so to get started, I really want to go over the distinctions and function of a micro school compared to other forms of education. And so to do this, I really want to get into the word. And so I want to draw your attention to Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 5 through 9. And it says this: "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. And you shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates." And this is this is among many verses, is one of the cornerstone verses for Kids of Grace Academy as a whole, but specifically for Timber Trails and this idea of families being in the driver's seat of their kids' education. Now, I want to break this down slightly. You didn't think you signed up for a Bible study, but that's kind of what we want to do here. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. This idea of loving the Lord your God. This is known as the Shema. And the idea behind this is to set the tone for your life. You are to love the Lord your God. This is a commandment. This is in the imperative. You will do this. You shall do this. And then note how you're to love him. It's not whimsically. It's not passively. It's not when you get around to it, it's with all of your heart and with all of your soul and with all your might. And we would see this otherwise translated in other parts of the Bible as love the Lord with all your heart, soul, and mind and might. And the reason for that is not because God decided to tack that on. It's because when that is translated into the Greek, there's really no way of splitting that out otherwise without bringing in the mind. And so this idea of your heart, your soul, your might, your mind, every facet of who you are is to love the Lord your God. Your life is to be this directional flow of loving God, and he is to be the main focus idea of your attention and affection. And then in verse 6, in these words I command you today shall be in your heart. Verse 7, it says, you shall teach them. Notice that. Teach what? These commands of loving God, of training people up to God. These commandments of loving the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. This is what you shall teach diligently to your children. So it is on the parents. We're seeing this right off the bat, right in Deuteronomy. It's on the parents to disciple their kids as the foremost entity of discipleship. They are responsible to God. This is God commanding them, you shall do this. You shall teach them diligently to your children. This isn't you shall assign them to a camp counselor, a youth pastor. Not that those have their absolute place, but the ultimate responsibility rests on the parents. This isn't a drop off and check out mentality. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and you shall talk of them. What is this again? Remember, this is how to love the Lord your God, how to love him with all your heart, soul, and mind and might, how to love him with everything you have. You shall teach that to them. When? Well, it tells us here, when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. Verse 8, you shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes, and you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Now, lest we be confused and you start taking this in a literal sense where you are actually to start writing things on the doorpost of your home, that doesn't really relate to us in the same way it would in an ancient Middle Eastern home. But let me break this down in a way that makes sense to us here and now. This is to be your main priority in life. You are to love God, and you are to make it a priority that your children know and love God. Now, with that being said, that's a backdrop to what we're going to talk about today. Now, we're not going to hit a home run here necessarily to get us completely in this. But what we want to do as an organization is allow for families to have the opportunity to do just this, right? To love the Lord their God with all their heart, soul, and might, but also to give them every opportunity they can to come alongside them and assist in teaching their children diligently. And just a thought that I've been having lately, there's so much of the Bible that talks about thinking and meditating and growing in our knowledge of God and loving God with our whole heart and mind. And the question I would want to pose to people is who's shaping that ability to think? Who is shaping the ability of kids to think? And that's a question I want parents to think about, is how do your kids think, and not just about God, that's the most important thing they can think about, but also about life in general. How do they process things? And who has trained them to process things? What has conditioned them to process things? And this is an important thing we have to understand, because someone is teaching your kids. Someone will teach your kids, and someone will pour into your kids, and you will be accountable to God for that. And that, this isn't to put a trip on any of us. This is reality. This isn't a trip. This is truth. We are accountable to God for the way we have shepherded and steward our kids' minds. And that being said, how are we doing that? What is the process by which we will do that? And so what we want to do here at Kids of Grace Academy is really truly put families in the driver's seat of their kids' education. Now, we understand that we may not be for everyone. We hope that we are for most, and for a lot of people. But what we want to do, if nothing else, is to provide opportunities for families to truly take the bull by the horns, if you would, get in the driver's seat, if you would, and truly get in the driver, be accounting for their kids' education. So we are biblically instructed, not so much to homeschool. That's not my main priority, is to convert everyone to homeschool. But we are biblically instructed to take control, to take a proactive approach to guarding the minds and hearts of our kids. And not just protecting them, but to instruct them and to guide them to a proper understanding of who God is and how to think of him. So we are biblically instructed, and families are accounting for the education of their kids. What do I mean by accounting? Now, I like that word better than teaching. A lot of the homeschool movement, and we're going to talk a lot about that in a few seconds here. The homeschool movement has really taught, and not wrongfully so, that parents are the primary educator in their kids' life, and that is true in many, many ways, especially in the realm of discipleship. We see it here in the text. But what I also understand is the the ability of accounting for what is being taught. And so I think we all can understand that we may not all be qualified to teach every subject to its full potential, or you may not feel that, whether you might be the one person who is, and so God bless you. I know for me personally, I'm not. There's a dynamic of, man, to get my kids where I want them to be academically, educationally, they're going to need some assistance in certain subjects. And whether that's through robust curriculums or some tutors or teaching, we need assistance. We need to come some help coming alongside this process. And so that's where I mean by accounting. It's not so much that we are doing all the teaching ourselves, it is that we are knowing where the teaching's coming from. We are accounting for where that teaching is coming from. So we're going, okay, we know that is where they're learning math. That's what they're learning in English. That's who's teaching them math. That's who's teaching them English. We have a tab on all of these things, and we're interacting with those tabs, and we know where their education's coming from. We may not be the one who's pulling the trigger on everything, but we know where it's coming from. And so families are accounting for education, and that's where we come into what we're calling the homeschool hybrid, or the micro school, where it is a dual option where you are working at home and at school, around the dinner table and with a teacher. So it's yes, and it's both. And so that's where we start. And so all of this will serve as a backdrop to understanding why we're doing what we're doing. Our goal is to glorify God through this, and give people the best opportunity to fulfill this calling. And so moving forward, we see too far, not far enough, too far. A reforming of education, frankly put. Now, we're not trying to be pretentious here, but there is a call and a need, therefore, to reform, because there's certain systems that haven't been working. And so before we get too far into the other things, I want to lay out a few things here. One, teaching is discipleship. Teaching is discipleship. There's no like, oh, that math and English and social studies, those are separate from actual discipleship. Well, that's not true. Teaching is discipleship by definition. That's what it means. You're guiding and directing, you're discipling, you're disciplining people in the ways of the Lord. So teaching is discipleship. And so it's not limited simply to Bible stuff. It transcends into everything. So if you have someone teaching Bible on one hand and then teaching a history class that is violently against the Bible, or a philosophy class or a logic class that is pulling people away from that, there's no neutral ground. And that's number two. There's no neutral ground in education. And I know I can speak from experience. I was brought up to think that there was neutral ground where, oh, this is a benign subject, or this is irrelevant to sacred things. No, it all meshes together, and it all comes down to how you think, how you process things, and what your affections are at. And we look at the reign of the realm of science. Science specifically has in many ways we go, oh man, well, we don't want them learning about evolution and stuff, and that's a high priority, but ultimately that's even a small footnote on what they shouldn't learn in the grand scheme of what they should learn, and that is, this is our Father's world. God made the heavens and the earth, and just having that shape your worldview. It's not so much that, oh yeah, that's what we learned in church, but then we learn about how things actually work in science. No, we take God and he is involved in every intricate detail of science. And if you miss that, you kind of miss the whole point of science itself. It is how God interacts with his creation. And that's how we want to shape and mold. We want us all to think biblically. And so number three, parents are stewards of their kids' education. You're responsible. I'm responsible for my kids. You're responsible for your kids, how they think and process God's world and God himself and themselves biblically, and how they and there's a way to do it wrongly. And number four, there is a famine of thinking biblically. Oftentimes we think moralistically, which isn't always biblically. We one of the main priorities with being brought up in a public education system, which I would assume most of the adults in this meeting are or have been, is that you're not necessarily trained to think biblically. You're trained to think socialistically. You're trained to think, okay, we need to be nice. We need to do all these things corporately as a society, but not necessarily kingdom mindedly. And so there's been a famine as a result of the last 100 years or so of public education, of people thinking biblically, and that's something that we're looking to recapture with Kids of Grace Academy. And number five, traditionally there's only been three options. So going into this, we've always understood you could either go to public school, or probably better put, government school. You could fork over thousands of dollars and do private school, or you could do homeschool. Now, up until about 10 minutes ago, homeschool, for me growing up, always had a stigma, if you would, of, okay, you live in the backwoods, you make your own clothes, you churn your own butter, and you kind of look a little shifty when you're around people. And obviously that's changed in the last definitely 10 years, and ultimately probably the last 20 years. It's been changing. But the idea behind it is we're kind of looking to create a fourth option. And what that is a hybrid between the private and the homeschool model, where yes, there is going to be some private tutelage, private teaching, private classroom instruction, but ultimately it's going to be homework. The work's going to be done at home. The real schooling will be nurtured and built out at home, with the parents knowing and guiding it. And so ultimately, what we have seen with even the private school model, sadly, is a lot of cutting and pasting of the public school business model and simply not receiving government funds in the same way. And so obviously a lot of the same policies are in place from the public school, and then they slap on a Christian, and not to diminish, there's many godly Christian private schools, and if that's where the Lord is leading your family, then I applaud that in many ways. But for many of them is simply a gateway, a gatekeeping mechanism, and largely it's the same policies as public school. And so what we want to do is have that private element where there is smaller classrooms, where there are a personalized teacher, but what we also want to provide is the ability for families to be more accountable and have more time at home, frankly. You do the math on time spent in private schools or public school educational institutions, and I mean, there's just it's just an issue of time. There's so much time spent at the school, and really when you boil it all down, there's a lot of wasted time. And one of our goals is to not waste time, because the days the days are short, and we want to make sure we maximize all the time we have with our kiddos, and maximize the efficiency of our time to pour into them the gospel and the good news and truly biblical worldview. And so Timber Trails, that's the name of the micro school. Timber Trails provides the flexibility to do that. And that's our main objective with this, is to provide that flexibility to equip, educate your kids, and also just to be able to spend time with them, right? They're growing up fast. Spend time with your kiddos and have that opportunity. So that's where the education reform, that's where we want to live in. Moving on here, what makes Timber Trails distinct? Well, we kind of went over that. We are Christ-centered, we are faith-building, and we're family-focused. So those are the three pillars, if you would, of really Kids of Grace Academy, but specifically in Timber Trails, we're Christ-centered. What does that mean? Well, it means, frankly, that Christ is the centerpiece of everything we do. He's not simply a thing we add on, a tip to the man upstairs. Oh yeah, we are Christian in essence. No, we are that is our focus. We want, if nothing else, kids to know Christ. They may not be math geniuses, they may not be the most articulate writers, but we of all things want them to know and love Christ. That is the highest priority. And so to have him at the center is essential. He's not a tack on, he is everything. And then next is faith building. So building off of that, we want people to be built up in Christ, right? We see that, in Colossians, as you have received Christ Jesus, so walk in him, being rooted and built up in him. That's Colossians 2:6. We want him to be the foundation by which we are planted, but by which we grow upon. And so faith building, and then finally family focused. We're all about the family, and that transcends into this idea of we want families to feel like they have access into their kids' education, and we want families to be able to do this practically. So we want to make this as affordable as we can, and we'll talk about that kind of in our FAQ area. But we want this to be accessible. Now we also want this to be Christian, and so this is not necessarily purely evangelistic where anyone can come. We want there to be intentionality. This isn't necessarily an open door for anyone. We want people who are serious about walking with the Lord here. And so that is essentially our gatekeeping mechanism, is we want people who want to walk with Christ. We want to help them do that. And so that's why it is important for us, for everyone to be on the same place, going the same direction. We want everyone on the same page there. And so that's where we're family focused. And so some of the other distinctions, you'll have independence. You can choose how much or how little you can participate. You'll have accountability. We have classroom structures that will set you up for home learning. So there'll be a teacher keeping people accountable, and we'll have structure. You'll know where you're going. A lot of people, they're scared to death of homeschooling because they are simply like, I don't know where to start. Well, we love to help with that. That's something we want to help assist people with. And so that's what makes us distinct. So moving on to the vision and direction of Timber Trails Micro School, the roles of teachers and the roles of the family. So let's get into this. This is where we'll spend some time here. So we have this broken up into two sections, an A day and a B day. And a nice way of thinking about A day is it's a full day. We nickname it Meg A day because it's a full day. And you at least you have the option of making it a full day. But with Mega Day, it's really set up to be classroom focused and grade focus. So what does that mean? It means that all the distinctions of the day kind of funnel into what grade you're in. So if you're in 6th grade, you'll be with other 6th graders, and first grade other with first graders. And this will fluctuate depending on how many kids. There's going to be some combined classes and stuff like that. But largely you're with your grade on A day, and on B day you are with your learning development area. And so this is broken up into classrooms. So on A day, it's going to be lots of subjects that aren't really based on development or based on learning. It's more on just this is where your grade is at. And I can show a visual about this in a second. But B day is going to be more development. And to make that more clear, like math. Math, we have, you can find sixth graders, and all 6 of them may be on different levels of math. And so what we don't want to do is put them all in the same grade and say, well, we'll figure this out. We want to make sure every kid's in the right spot developmentally. And so on B day, that's where we have all the math classes available, and people will test into them, or we'll place them, we'll sort them into the right spot. That way they can thrive. I know a lot of kids struggle and they actually learn to hate certain subjects because they just kind of got left behind. Our goal is to keep them in the right spot, with the right attention, without having to worry about our arbitrary grades. And so that's kind of the distinction. A day will be located on many different campuses. We have 5 different campuses for A day, but B day will be centralized, meaning that we're only going to offer it in limited capacities. So it's going to be very central to where you'll have to go. And we're in the process of working through what is being offered at which campus, but by and large, Lake Oswego will be our main B day focus. And so A day will be in 5 different locations. B day predominantly will be focused in on Lake Oswego. And then core programming, number 2, and focus classes. So part of the core program will be on A day. And traditionally, what we have been known for is co-op. That is now shifting into what we're calling the core program. And that's going to consist of several subjects. One is going to be World Watch, where the class of peers watches current events on a very Christian conservative news network, and then kind of analyzing the news really at a high level. Science, art, music, and Bible. And so those are going to be the core subjects of the core program. And it's going to be very classroom centered, where there's going to be a lot of classroom discussions, classroom working. It's going to really look traditionally like a lot of classrooms looked like growing up, that we are familiar with in the public school, is going to be found in core programming. This kind of classroom unity that you find. And then so that's on A days, and that breaks up in the first part. That's a 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock on A days. The focus classes will look a little different. Those will be based in the afternoon. They're still going to be in the grade, but you have the option to join them if you want to. They're kind of separated out in the pricing scale, where you can sign up for core programming. You can add on the focus classes, and the focus classes are going to be our history. This is on A day for the grade school, history and IEW writing. So history and writing will be on A Day. And for the middle school, it's going to be science and history. So for the elementary, they're going to do their writing and they're going to do their history, and for the middle school they're going to do their science and their history. And again, these are grade focused, but they're going to look traditionally more like, dare I say, a junior college class, not so much in rigor academic prowess, but more in the structure of, you come into the class, you sit at your desk, you will interact with your class in the same way, but it's not going to have that same classroom focus. It's going to be more of a class that you learn a certain subject and then you leave that class. And that's going to be the focus classes. And so on B-Day is entirely focus classes as far as Timber Trails is concerned. There's also other electives at Lake Oswego that are, you can register for additionally. But as far as the micro school goes, it's going to be focus classes, and that's where we're going to see math and literature primarily for the grade school, and then math, literature, and writing for the middle school. And so those are going to be on the A Day. Those are going to be on the B Day, whereas the core programming will have other focus classes. And this is all spelled out on the website with the breakdown of each class and where it fits on the A Day, B Day. And teachers are set students up to work at home. So the idea is we are maximizing the classroom time. We're not fluffing it up. We're not spreading it out and trying to pump life or air into it. We're coming into those classes with purpose, because ultimately we want a lot of the work to be done at home, a lot of the reading to be done at home, a lot of the, and we want to make that intentional too. We don't believe in busy work. We believe in effective work. And so we want to set kids up for effective work at home. Teachers will track progress and communicate with families. So one of the main staples that we're looking to institute, and this is specifically when it comes to the focus classes, we also are looking to build on communication additionally with all the other levels. But what we really want is to emphasize teachers keeping kids accountable, communicating with parents what is being taught and how they're being taught. And we also have a scope and sequence that we've laid out that will allow families to really look at what should be taught. So you'll know the whole year in advance of what is going to be taught. And this is going to be available for those registered. So we're not going to make this public necessarily. We have the scope and sequence, but we're going to break down each week for those registered. And that will be sent out at the beginning of the term. But the idea is that you'll be able to know exactly what is being discussed in the class, what the homework should or shouldn't be, and on it goes. Now, teachers will have the ability to tweak slightly throughout the year, and as it makes sense. But you'll see the large picture, and those tweaks will be communicated. So students are expected to come prepared because we're communicating all of this. Students are expected to know what is being presented in the class, and they're going to come prepared. So what we don't want this to be is just a giant playtime. What we want is for there to be intentional time, maximizing the time for the teacher. And so for that reason, parental involvement is essential. This isn't a drop off and check out mentality. We've seen the fruit of that. It's not good. We want teachers to be teaching. We want parents to also be teaching, but guiding and directing their kids and working with those teachers. So you may not remember any algebra from high school, join the club, but what you can do is make sure that your kiddo is engaging at the level they need to with all their math and all their writing, all their literature. And that's where the teachers and the parent involvement will be essential. So that's essentially how Timber Trails will work. So we're going to answer the rest of the questions here: the academics, the protocols, and the implementation. So essentially all the nuts and bolts. So here's some specific details I did want to go over. And so number one, what's the difference between Timber Trails and Timber Academy? Well, Timber Trails is essentially birth through 8th grade, and Timber Academy is our high school. That's the only difference. Everything else, a lot of the same principles follow through. They're going the same direction with a full vision of the future. The only difference is high school is categorically different in that that's where you're essentially playing for keeps. That's where where logging grades and transcripts are developed. And this is what a lot of people are unaware of with education is middle school. There are no transcripts for middle school. It starts in high school. Now you can have things transfer over. So if you're taking a high school level class, we can work with you on that. That's not really what we're talking about. We're talking more about the process of middle school is not something that, say, colleges look at. Colleges look at your high school transcript. So that's why we have separated them out and really have devoted different levels of attention to the academics on the high school front. We are very we want to be very rigorous with the forward thinking of high school uh, call at the end of high school. Now, that's ultimately how we've created our scope and sequence. We've started at 12th grade and we worked backwards to make sure that no one is impaired or isn't able to get where they want to go because of our curriculum or our robustness. We want to create as much academic rigor as possible. So starting with 12th grade, we work back to 11th, 10th, 9th, 8th to get where we want to go with the 12th grade. What should the 8th grader be learning right now? 7th, 6th, 5th, and working our way forward. That way we have a full comprehensive vision of our curriculum and where we want to go. That's important to us. And so that keeps us rigorous, that keeps our finger on the pulse, if you would, of where we're going academically. But we also know that we don't want to be putting a lot of grading emphasis necessarily. And we'll parse that out in the 8th grade when that real like, and I mean by A, B's, C's, and D's, when really the main thing is knowing the facts. Freshman year is when we really start to tally up the points in that way. So I'll explain that in a few minutes here. Number two, the rooted intensive is going to be the A-Day core program for middle school. And it's a deep dive into biblical thinking and understanding. So this is spelled out on the website. We just released a video which is on the website. You can watch that. But what we're going to be covering is biblical logic, biblical theology, apologetics, and really we're going to be gleaning from a lot of godly Christian writers, and we're going to have some worldview analysis. We're going to see how right thinking looks and how wrong thinking looks played out in society, played out over history. And so there's going to be a lot of learning how to think. And as the name implies, there's going to be a rooting that goes down. Now it's called intensive, not because it's super intense, but more so because of just the immersion into the content. We're going to be deep diving into things, and for that purpose, there is an intensive study that goes into it. But I don't want you to think necessarily that they're going to be signing up for some sophomore and college level class. This is going to be definitely age appropriate and tailored for middle school. Number three, 5 A-Day campuses, and this is going to be in 2024, 25. We're launching 5 campuses for A-Day specifically, and that's on the website, but just real fast, that's going to be Canby, Tualatin, Oregon City, Lake Oswego, and Newburgh. So if you are anywhere around those 5 locations, that's where we're offering A-Days. And I have some sad news regarding grade school at Lake Oswego. We have just capped it. So we are closing registration. We're in waitlist only mode for Lake Oswego grade school. Middle school and preschool and in kindergarten down there's still spaces. It's limited, but there's still spaces. All the other campuses are open, and we want to make sure we allow for as many people to join us as we can. B-Days, as I said, will be centralized. Core programming will include special days and spirit weeks. And so this is a lot of fun. We're doing the Bible Bee. We're going to do some talent shows and other extracurricular activities. This is going to be what really make community building and really make the enjoyability of these classes come to life. People have a lot of fun with these, and the Bible Bee especially, it's one of my personal favorites. It's a great opportunity to be able to learn the Bible. And we're going to actually build that out even more this year than we did last year. Coordinators, each location will have a staff coordinator. And so they're going to be the ones streamlining a lot of the core programming, a lot of the spirit weeks. Like we had a 80s day last week. We're doing something similar this next year, or last year. I mean, we're going to do something similar this year, and we'll have different fun activities. We'll be doing different activities as a group, corporately, as all 5 campuses will come together. One of the things we're looking to do is making the Bible be something that will be in-house compete, where one campus will have a competition, but then eventually they'll play out over all 5 campuses, and we'll establish one winner over the 5 campuses. But coordinators are going to be the ones running that. They're going to be the point of contact for the campus as a whole. Teachers will be the ones responsible for the in-classroom stuff, but the overall campus will be run by the coordinators. So there's a coordinator that's going to be running each spot. And so that's going to be how that is going to work. Now, the nuts and bolts of everything else, let's keep going here. Scope and sequence. Like I said, we've put it, we have start to finish planned out. So you as families, you can look at and go, okay, this is where we're going if we ascribe to the curriculum here. Now, like I said, you're in the driver's seat. So if you go, well, I really would rather still do our own math at home, or hey, we'll do everything but literature, or what have you. That's your prerogative. You can absolutely do that. You don't have to go through our system. We're just providing the option. Now, we would encourage, and we've incentivized people to go through our system. That way we can ensure that the classrooms are successful, but you as a family have that priority and that prerogative. Grades. Our main priority is for students to learn and progress in a subject, not necessarily for a letter grade. Focus classes will have a percentage grading. So the main point that we want to see, and this is really going to flesh itself out in the focus classes, and even specifically in 8th grade, or 7th and 8th grade, middle school, is we want kids to be learning and to be tracking how they're learning and knowing that they're learning. That's important to us. Oftentimes grades can become distraction. We want them to know that they're moving forward, and we want the teachers to be able to assess that they're ready to move to the next level. And so that is our main priority. Now, grades do help with that, and I would say percentages perhaps help more. And so whether that's 100% to, if you're in the 70s, and we would traditionally call that a C, so it might be semantics, but if you're like at 65 and you're really not getting it, but you're kind of scraping by, we want to come alongside you, not so much that you get to a 70, but we want to get you up to an 80 or 90. We want you to fully get this stuff. And so that's where we're looking at percentages, not so much as a pass or fail in a lot of these. We want you to be growing in your knowledge. And we want teachers, we want to train them to come alongside families to understand the big picture of education as well. Not so much that, well, they're good at passing tests, but know that they truly understand the subject and the content being taught. And so it's a slight distinction, but we're going to be tracking it that way, and that's going to be very clearly shown on our software mechanism that we are going to be communicating with, and we'll be launching that, and that's our next thing. Communication. Teachers and coordinators will be regularly communicating with families, and we're going to be launching a new software very soon here. One of the things that we're growing in is really making communication streamlined and making it accessible for families. And so in the next few weeks, next month or so, we're going to be launching and unrolling new software systems for families to engage with their kids' classes and what's expected. And the teachers are going to be getting in there. They'll be trained how to use it, and really making it very clear how your kid's doing, what they need to do, what you can do to help them, what the teacher said, there's going to be a lot of communication, and really just helping you guys tackle this beast that is education. And so that's going to be coming. We are ironing out the details as we speak on getting the best system in place and making it streamlined, making it also, accessible, not having to relearn 100 different things, but making it as user friendly as possible. Those are things we're working on right now. And so if you register, that will be made accessible to you. Safety and security, this is a huge priority for us, and this is something that we're moving into and going to be really taking a very firm approach. The fact that we are in for many of our A-Day campuses, not all of them will have middle school options, by the way, but most of our A-Day campuses will be filling up and will have different functions going on all over the metro. We want to make sure that kids are safe and that we have policies that are being enforced. And so we want to make sure, and we're going to be taking strong measures to ensure that that safety internally and externally are that kids are safe. So that internally, like who's in the classroom and who's has access to the kids internally, but also outside influences coming in. We want to guard against both. And so we're taking precautions on that. We'll have more literature out soon on just the steps that we're taking. So internal, external safety. We also want to really monitor. This is number 5, that we're devoutly biblical. And our goal is to be biblically informed with all of our policies, and that includes our behaviors, our conduct, our dress codes, and correcting. And so these are things that we are going to make policies and protocols on. Don't worry, we are not going to necessarily be implementing a dress code that will involve uniforms, but we will have standards that we are going to clearly communicate. I think most people are going to be doing just fine on that. But we're going to create, we're going to publish policies and dress codes and codes of conduct. That way everyone's on the same page. We all know what's expected. We're also going to make sure that we eliminate bullying and wild behavior. And so we're going to be very clear what's accepted, what's not accepted, where it's accepted. So if you kids just want to run around, that's great. That's very kid-like behavior. They need to do that in certain places. They can't just be running through the church sanctuary and stuff like that at the different locations that we'll be meeting. And so we'll be very clear on where and what, and that those are things that the coordinators are going to help enforce. And also there'll be correction and very well spelled out what that will look like if these are not followed. And so we just want to be clear. We don't want this to be arbitrary. We want everyone to go into these things with eyes wide open, knowing exactly what is expected and what's not expected. And so we want to be very biblical. We want to be biblical in our correction. We want to be biblical in our being gracious. We want to understand that kids are kids and they are not polished adults. But we also want to acknowledge that we don't want to tolerate chaos either. So we want to make sure that we have a good balance of both, and ultimately being biblical in that. And so we'll be publishing more detailed literature on that. But just as a big picture idea, those are our main priorities going into. These are a lot of what we've been adjusting even in these summer weeks that we've had so far. So a few potential FAQs before we enter our Q&A. Where's our family center? We've heard a lot about a family center. Where's the family center? Well, the family center location will be Lake Bible Church in Lake Oswego. We have been so immensely blessed to have a space full-time there. We have recently, this is hot off the press, we're moving into the space that St. Stephen's Academy. They're moving to Beaverton. We're moving into their space, and that is going to serve as our central hub and as our family center. So we're going to run all of our electives out of there, and it's going to be an awesome opportunity to get grounded there. Now, here's what I do want to make very clear. We are striving for zero variance when it comes to the programming of A-Days. And so I don't want you to feel that if you are going to Oregon City or Tualatin or Newberg or Canby, that you're going to get any less than you would for the core program on A-Day. Now, obviously we're going to be running our electives and most of the B-Day content through there. However, we are looking to create a zero variance when it comes to the A-Day core program, and that was spelled out earlier. Is the Academy specifically Christian? Yes, in every way. And so a question that did come up is, what if your kid's not necessarily walking with the Lord? And we will handle that on a case-by-case basis, and that's going to be largely about the family support around it. What we don't want to do is put in jeopardy the core function of what we're looking to do. But what we want to make sure kids are rooted in their faith, and sometimes kids' faith it's not as deep as they want it to be. We want to help with that. So, but being said, our main objective is for Christian families who are plugged into a church to grow in that knowledge of Christ and to come alongside them. Now, what we do require is families to be plugged into a church. And the reason we require that is simply because we don't want to fulfill that role as an academy. We're not equipped to be the church. We are not the church. We are a part of the church body at large, but we are not the local church. We are an academy. And we don't want to confuse the two, because there's a certain level of care and shepherding that church pastors are equipped by God to give and provide, that we as an academy, we want to help shepherd and point you to that, and lovingly come alongside you as much as we can. But we don't want to make any attempt to replace your local church. Can I drop off? Yes. 1st through 8th grade families can drop off. We are requiring that birth through kindergarten families have a representative parent or guardian stay on site at all times. And that's for safety, that's for insurance. There's lots of levels for that. But ultimately, 1st through 8th grade, there is a drop-off option. And then finally, we're getting down to the finances here. Are there scholarships? I know times are tough. Believe me, we all know that times are hard. Are there scholarships? Well, we want to make that we want to make everything as affordable as possible. There's a lot of overhead. There's a lot of bills that we have to pay. Running even a hybrid academy is not a cheap endeavor, and we want to make payment plans as available as possible. We want to make them as generous and as flexible for your schedule as we can. And we also take donations that can be put towards scholarship. What we don't want to do is make some people pay less than others just because of social economic status. There's a word for that. It's called socialism. No, I'm just kidding. But ultimately, what we want is we want other people to be able to be generous too, because we're running at a tight margin. We want to make sure it's as cheap as possible for everyone, and so we are accepting donations from outside sources so that we can put it to scholarships. And so if you are feeling generous, we love your support. That's where your donations are largely going to, is allowing families to attend. And so we will definitely take donations. Thank you for joining us in this meeting. God bless you guys. And the meeting component, not the Q&A, will be published. So if you want to go back and say, what did he really say that? Any clarification on that, you can go back and watch it. Until we see each other in person, God bless you guys. Have a great summer, and we hope to see you in the fall. So register today, and we will talk to you soon. God bless you guys.